That's right. We spent a lot of time talking about California politics here, and there's a couple of good reasons why. First of all, it's our biggest, most populous state. And I'll have you know there are more Republicans in California than in any other state. That's true. Check out the numbers. That's number one. Number two, don't know if you've noticed this trend, but a whole lot of Democrats from California end up making their way to D.C. and ruining people's lives when they get power. The last nominee was from California. Her name was Kamala Harris. Everyone tells me the new nominee is Gavin Newsom. That's going to be a problem. And finally, the most important reason why we talk about California politics is, well, because I lived there for like decades. My kids still live there. I care about California, Californians, and California politics, and I remember what it used to be like. That's why I am very pleased and proud to bring in a guy who's actually making a difference in California for the Republican Party. He is David Johnson. He's the chairman of the Santa Clara County Republican Party. Dave, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for all the great work you're doing up there in the Bay Area, of all places.
Well, Larry, thanks for having me. Yes, it's easy for me, right? I am one of the few that you'll ever meet who was born and raised in Santa Clara County, Silicon Valley, when it was orchards and kids riding bikes and playing ball at the park like that. And I've watched as over time, of course, all of these very, very smart people, mostly from the East, with all due respect, but they went to liberal colleges or whatever, and they brought their politics to our nice neighborhoods. And I watched also as my childhood friends, who are all conservatives, one by one, have largely moved. And I determined a long time ago that I was going to stay and fight, because I'm not interested in letting what I call the freight train that is the Democrat Party in the state of California. I have no interest in letting it run me over.
Well, I appreciate that, but let's break through some of the sort of stereotypes that a lot of people have about California politics, especially with Republicans. First of all, is it fair to say that California at this point is a one-party state in terms of leadership, in terms of the governance, in terms of who's actually writing the laws, passing the laws, and calling the shots?
Yeah, I think, Larry, it's very fair to say it's a one-party state. Look, we've had a one-party state for 16 years and a super majority for the greater majority of that 16 years. When you have a one-party state that's only interested really in self-preservation, they've shut the back door. They've made it hard for Republicans. If they had their way, there'd never, ever be another Republican to be elected to any state office. And in the meantime, as is coming out more and more, with all the fraud, Minnesota, California, I'm hearing numbers upwards of $500 billion. We can see what the result of a one-party state has produced here.
Yeah, and listen, that's not how our system in this country was set up. Our constitutional republic with our representatives and our various legislative bodies, it doesn't function if only one party's in charge. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of my elevator speech, if you will, is I ask, because everywhere I go, surrounded by liberals, and I love to ask them just a simple question, and that is, can a bird with one wing fly? And they always look at me funny. And I say, no, think about it. Can a bird with one wing fly? And they think about it. And invariably they say, well, no. And I say, why? And they say, well, it'll spin to the ground. Exactly. And my whole point is, and how I actually break the ice with my liberal friends and neighbors, is by using that example. And then I come back with, all I'm asking is that wouldn't it make sense if the political bird in the state of California actually had two wings? Like, two wings makes the bird fly in the political sense. and we're not equally represented commensurate with the population that we have who are, as you said, Larry, Republican.
Dave, I am totally stealing that bird with one wing thing. That is a brilliant way to put it. And it's undeniable. And it's 100% what's happening in that state. So that said, in Little Pocket, I keep telling people, you heard the intro, there are a ton of Republicans in California, and there are some great conservative enclaves. I didn't realize Santa Clara was this little island. I mean, this is San Jose. This is, Silicon Valley. This is the crazies in big tech. But you've been able to work a miracle there. You're actually growing your party in Santa Clara, aren't you?
Well, yes and no. So we're in Santa Clara County. It's basically, I think it's at roughly 80-20, 80% Democrat, 20% Republican. And I think as recently as about 8 years ago, it was 75-25. And that's about as far back as I care to go because the decline has been consistent over the last 20 years. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I'm going to give the Democrats 100% credit for doing a good job of invalidating anyone who says that they're a Republican. Like my friends who are Republicans or conservatives at the very least are afraid to admit that they are for fear of losing their job. Or we are told in various cities, or at least we were, that we couldn't canvass or talk to our friends and neighbors at the farmers markets and stuff like this. And I would always, and we've changed that narrative. In other words, no, I pull out my pocket constitution and hand it to whoever's running the market, and I say, here's the First Amendment. Can you show me here where it says anything about having to stand on a sidewalk or over under that tree, half a block away? It doesn't say anything about that. And so I have my First Amendment right, and I will use them wherever I am, because the First Amendment is wherever I'm at. And so we've had a lot of success locally restoring the First Amendment, as crazy as that sounds. And our local Republican Central Committee, one of the things that put me in the chair, so to speak, as the chairman, was that I wrote a plan, and my plan was, well, you got this splinter group and that splinter group, and the Vietnamese, they love America. They're very patriotic and conservative. So are the Iranians. So are there's a whole large contingent of Chinese who are very conservative. They're very concerned about school choice. And my theory was, well, if I could just get us all together under one umbrella, and if we could all talk and get along, that 40,000 voters here, that 100,000 over there, plus the 100 and something thousand that are already registered Republicans, maybe we could start to make a push. And that's what's been happening.
Sounds like good old-fashioned coalition building, and I love it. And that's how you got to rebuild a party. And listen, I used to be a Republican in LA County. I worked in the entertainment industry. It was dangerous to reveal to your coworkers and certainly to your bosses or the owners of the company you worked at that you were a Republican. That's that's an existential thing, sadly, but truthfully in LA County. Is it different in Santa Clara? Can you be a Republican, a conservative, work for high tech or some of the other big industries there and not worry about losing your job?
Well, take Google, for example. I have a number of friends who work at Google. They won't admit that they are Republican. I work for myself, and it's been that way for a long time. And one of the reasons I work for myself is because I wouldn't put up with that kind of stuff working for somebody else who I didn't align with politically. And working for myself, I don't have to worry about getting canceled. But one of the members of our central committee recently had to quit because she's running for the mayor of one of the local towns. and her supporters, she could win, but her supporters said, you'll never win if you have an R after your name. And so she had to re-register as an independent. My job as the county chairman in Santa Clara County is to make it restore the good name of our party so that people can say that they're a conservative or a Republican without fear of losing their job or you know, being ostracized publicly.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. That's huge. Dave Johnson is the chairman of the Republican Party in Santa Clara County in California. And Dave, I used to do radio in Southern California, and I would get conservative Republicans calling into my show. And one of the things that I was constantly fighting against, and I'd love for you to speak to this, is this sort of Eeyore attitude, this malaise that you get from Republicans, like, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I door knock. It doesn't matter if I organize. It doesn't even matter if I vote because we're so outnumbered, nothing's going to happen. And that's just a loser mentality. People got to get out there and vote because there's a hell of a lot of Republicans.
If you look at the way things went in the presidential election, it was a 60-40. And because we know there's fraud in California, it actually may not have been that bad. Okay. But the thing is, yes, door knocking and this and that. I think where we're finding the most success is on 70-30 or 80-20 issues. In other words, for example, voter ID. 70 to 75% of Californians and across the entire country, for that matter, are in favor of voter ID. You don't need to be a Republican to want that. The Democrats want it too, but their leaders don't. Well, why? That's a whole different question. Maybe we'll get there later. Another one is parents' rights, school choice. In other words, a lot of parents don't want their kids to be to have to be exposed to, drag queen story hour, right? And that runs across. And the other one is fraud. There's not a Democrat anywhere around here who says, yes, I want more fraud. They don't want that. And so if you talk about coalition building, the way to build agreement and that coalition is by talking about the issues that strike right in people's hearts.
Yeah, and listen, on those two basic issues, voter ID and parents' rights, you're 100% right. They're incredibly popular with the voters, and the leadership in Sacramento, they're ignoring the voters. They are doing the opposite of what the people want. So that's how you get in. That's how you motivate people to vote, right? By hammering issues like that. That makes sense.
That's right. Here's what I do. I mean, you're right on that. But when I go to my farmers markets, I wear shirts that get people's attention. If you like fraud, vote Democrat. It's an icebreaker. And that's why I knew that I could run a central committee, is because I've been wearing shirts like that for years. A country without a border is not a country. If you like crime, vote Democrat. I wore MAGA shirts for years and years before I was, quote unquote, I was politically active. I just didn't run the central committee. But now I print these shirts and I either give them away or sell them if possible to raise money for the committee, but also because I'm building an army of people that are like-minded. With regard to Sacramento, I think it's a funny phenomenon watching what happens to somebody who runs either as a Democrat or a Republican. What happens to them when they get to Sacramento is they're somehow corrupted. I think it's the same with congressmen and senators. Once you join that club, they indoctrinate you and you are beholden, right? But I think our state government, especially with their supermajority, they're so tone deaf, and that's what we're working towards. This is probably this year. This is arguably the best chance that we're going to have, because we've got voter ID on the ballot. We've got a couple of good gubernatorial candidates. Just give me one. I like Steve. Other people like Chad, but just give me one, because I don't think there's a chance we're gonna get both of them. Um, but and if we break the supermajority, we can start to have some impact on politics in the state.
Well, it would be amazing to get both of them, and I'm still praying for that. But listen, Dave, we gotta wrap it up, and I would love for you to send us out with a message. What do you want the voters of Santa Clara County, but also the entire state of California, to hear from you? Give them some hope and give them some motivation to get out there and vote, vote, vote.
Okay, right. The entire focus of our particular central committee, we have a whole slate of really great candidates, and they're running on common sense, which is in short supply here in California. But we run on common sense. We're fiscally responsible. We want to have the second wing of the bird be restored. And there's so many ways to participate. Somebody can help somebody canvass if they're interested. Or you got to talk to your friends and neighbors about the issues that everyone is concerned with that are not unique to, that are not party specific. I like to also use a line called excessive taxation is the pathway to slavery. That gets people's attention, just like if you like fraud. But there's so many, and the other thing that's such a challenge for us is this sort of, Trump bad. Everything is Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad. And there's no dialogue with a lot of people. And I'm going to give the media credit for convincing people that Trump is bad and we have to stand up against Trump and ICE is bad. And I like what one of the candidates said in the debate the other night, where he said, if we just work with the federal government, you'd see how much better it would be. And I believe that. And we already fought a civil war. We don't need states flipping their middle finger at the federal government.
Amen to that. Well, listen, Dave, keep up the great work in Santa Clara County, and we'll check back in with you again, see how it's going, especially with this incredible governor's race you're having in the Golden State. We care deeply about California, and they used to say, however goes California, so goes the nation. And well, when Reagan was president, that was a good thing. Now, I'm not so sure, but we can get it back. I promise. I know we can. So that's it for our show today. Make sure you watch us tomorrow. We'll be back same time, same place. But in the meantime, this is Town Hall Media. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.